Tonight we're talking 2 episodes of Famously Single. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
What up, AfterBuzzers? It's your boy DJ Jesse Janedy here in studio for E's newest show, Famously Single, and of course, AfterBuzz had to be talking about it. I'm super excited, even though I'm in studio all by myself. You know, we had to get somebody from the show, so we have on the line right now with us dating coach Rob Mack. What up, Robert?
What's up? How's it going?
Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now we're listening to right now Dumb Blonde, Aubrey, one of the cast members on the show, her group. So make sure you guys check out their music. Real place, you know, some of the girls have some dope music out there. Like I actually, Samaya Reese was one of the first people I met here in LA. Believe it or not. So very interesting to see her on this show because girl done grown up. All right, Robert, what was it like getting involved with this show?
Oh man, it was awesome. It was totally different than what I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be, I mean, it was crazy, don't get me wrong, but it was so much fun, man. It was so much fun.
How did you become a part of the process?
Yeah, you know, they were looking for dating coaches, and, you know, they basically found me through a pool of other people, I guess, that are out there, you know, showing people how to find love and, you know, just kind of create better relationships, and that was it.
I actually, I forget how it came across you, but I was like, wow, this guy's Instagram, he's so positive. Like every day it's all these motivational posts. And so you've written a number of books on dating. How do you fall into becoming a dating coach? Like, how do you know, like, you know what, my job is to make sure everybody is in love?
Well, you know, it's a good question because I started out really focusing on happiness, and I still focus on happiness. I mean, that's what we want love for, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went to, there's a program at Penn that is called Applied Positive Psychology, and it's all about like what makes life worth living. It's like the science of happiness. And I did that, you know, in like 2006, 2007, and I came out and I opened my own practice. It was really just about helping people live happier lives. And then I started noticing like everybody that was calling me were really calling with relationship problems. So, you know, before long, it became really more about relationships and dating and finding love and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about happiness, really. I mean, that's what we're all after, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always have to ask this because it always intrigues me when I talk to dating coaches. And Darcy, I met her on the NBC carpets, and she was the first one I've actually met who's in a relationship. And I was like, oh my gosh. She was like, is that a weird thing? I was like, I have not, and I've been out in LA for a while, met somebody who genuinely is out here hooking people up and is in their own relationship. Because part of me was like, I feel like I need to become a dating coach because I can hook up anybody and they are all happily with each other, and I can't damn find myself a person. Like, I'm just out here like, shoot. So for you, are you in a relationship? Were you in a relationship when you first started getting into it? What was that?
Yeah, you know, I've been in a series of relationships over the years, really, for the most part, happy ones.
Okay.
You know, but I'm not in a relationship now. Per se, you know, the thing about me is that I really genuinely love helping people, and I love helping people become happier. And so, whether they're in a relationship or not, and it just so happens that I'm not in a relationship, a formal one right now. But you know, the way I see it, and it's going to sound a little bit abstract, but I really believe that everybody that we meet and talk to every day is another opportunity to like love people. So,
Amen.
You know, it's just more important for me for people to realize that, because I think when you're just really a loving person and you're like, you know, a fun person, an enjoyable person, a happy person, I think, you know, everybody you talk to you're in a relationship with them some kind. And so, but in terms of traditional relationship, no, it's mostly focused on other people right now. So
I feel it. All right, so I'm going to go through the names of everybody and just kind of, if you could give a sentence or two about each one of them when you initially met them. Yeah. So we see from the Jersey Shore, Pauly D.
Yeah.
What was your first take going in, what you know of Pauly D, and then meeting Pauly D?
Yeah. What I knew of him was just a party guy, loved to hook up. When I met him, he was the friendliest guy, biggest heart, ton of fun, funny, and real clean. You know, I always thought, you know, you see Paulie, you see he's really clean. So.
Then we meet Miss Aubrey from Danity Kane originally. And this is that you connected with her upon initial meeting.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You know, if you think about Aubrey, before meeting her, I just assumed, you know, she's a performer. You know, she had dated, I think, P. Diddy for a while.
A couple, yeah.
I knew that she was talented. You know, and then when I met her, I was surprised actually how deep she went. She's actually pretty deep. When you talk to her on a one-on-one level, like, she has a lot of interesting, deep things to say. And, you know, from a psychology perspective, that was interesting to me. You know, she's also, you know, a lot in her head, and she projects a lot of that. So there's a lot of drama around that too. So, you know, I have to say overall, though, she was much more deep. She was much deeper and more sort of authentic in one-on-one situations than I expected her to be.
I want to branch off of that really quickly. You said she was deep, and that kind of she was deep, and then she also lives in her head a little bit. When you say that, rings a bell for me personally. And so my question to you is, living in your head, is that because due to past experiences, you would say, and you just kind of putting that guard up as far as like, okay, every situation I go in, I have to think about my past situations and, you know, put all of those stigmas into what I'm dealing with in the present?
Yeah, that's a great question. Wow, you're going deep on me right now.
Boy, you know, this is why I go home and think about for my life. So this is so I think it's a great show, and I do want to say this about the show, E. I love that it got they had some little ratch moments, but for the most part, this show is where I would love to see reality television going, taking celebrities and authentically putting them in these types of situations. So I love that. But sorry about that. But going into that,
no, it's 100% actually related to what I was going to say, because you know, the interesting thing is, yes. So put my positive psychology expert hat on for a second. You know, being in your head and being a ruminator, right, tends to lead to a very unhappy life, and it leads to unhappy relationships. When you're always in your head, you're very rarely present with people, and so it makes it hard to actually enjoy yourself and enjoy your life. Part of that is genetic, but part of that is also, you know, a result of upbringing and past experiences. And the tendency is that if left unchecked, it tends to only get worse. You know, when you're a ruminator, you worry a lot, you think a lot. It doesn't tend to get better on its own. So it's something that you often seek, you know, sort of experts' help with, or, you know, whether that's through books or through therapy or something, up to you. So that's the first part of that. The second part of that is that, yes, while that can be a disadvantage, it can also be an advantage. So, for instance, with Aubrey, she's very much in her head. She's actually very intelligent and deep woman, and yet at the same time, you know, that hurts her relationships, and it hurts her personal life or whatnot. But the show overall is I mean, for a reality TV show, it's a really pretty deep show. And if you hear a lot of what Dr. Darcy is saying and what Laurel's saying, and hopefully what I'm saying occasionally, it's something that actually can help change your life. And so I have to agree with you. You know, I was surprised, and that's one of the things I was most surprised by, was that, you know, E was producing a TV show, and they always do great TV shows, but one that was like hitting people from a different perspective. And it was, you know, sort of diving more deeply into what's going on with relationships, what's going on with people. And, you know, they brought in this really great therapist, Dr. Darcy, who has a lot of really interesting things to say. Listen, she's Ivy League, you know, so, you know, legitimate, deeply credentialed. Yeah, so it's a totally different show. And I do hope that reality TV sort of goes in that direction.
Yeah, I think we definitely need a conversation for the stuff. You know, I'm all here for Ratch Television, if anyone here at AfterBuzz knows that. But I think there needs to be a conversation after we watch stuff like that that kind of breaks down what was happening. Because I think Bad Girls Club tried to do something similar, but I'm loving the way E took this show. All right, so who do we have next? We got Josh Murray, The Bachelor. He's from The Bachelorette. So I'm not a Bachelorette person, but this was really intriguing to me because to have someone who's already been in a game show type mentality. Yeah. What would you say was kind of the difference between him and some of the other celebrities in there?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question, man. You know, I'm not sure exactly. Like, before meeting Josh in person, I just knew him as this like really great looking, nice guy, you know, that was on the, you know, that it was on this former show that I never watched either. I mean, and so you know, The Bachelorette. So after meeting him, though, I mean, I was really surprised. I mean, he's a really authentic guy, really nice, just a genuinely nice guy. He's like, you know, just the kind of guy you want to hang out with. And you know, at the same time, I wonder a little if, you know, kind of being on those types of shows doesn't put you in a position of just feeling a little less, a little more defensive.
Right.
And a little more paranoid, maybe. And I don't know if that was Josh's experience. I don't want to, you know, sort of speak for him, but I certainly think that if I was in this position like him, and I had been on, you know, sort of game type of reality shows in the past, I'd probably be a little suspicious, maybe, and I might have my defenses up more than some of the other folks. You know, so I think with Josh, you know, I think he had a really great experience. I mean, everything I know about his experience on the show was really positive, and I also know that he's wanting to go deeper. You know, in terms of, you know, his own relationships, in terms of his own understanding of sort of around love and all that good stuff. But, you know, I mean, he's genuinely interested in finding love. Like, Josh isn't just saying it to say it, he means it.
Right. We had Callum Best from Big Brother
I didn't know
UK.
much about Callum before the show. I knew he was a legitimate actor. You know, I knew that he modeled a little bit in Europe with Brandy, apparently, you know, when they were a little younger and everything. But, Callum, again, like, you know, what you're said earlier about it just being, you know, a little bit deeper of a reality show. It's sort of hitting on some things that aren't sort of business as usual reality TV. It resonates again in this conversation about Callum, because Callum's really deep. I mean, in fact, you talk to Callum, he's a really intelligent guy, really quick, really witty. You talk to him, and before long, you're like, wow, this is going to a place I never expected it to.
Yep.
You know, and in fact, in plenty of the scenes, we had to like back up. Like, this is okay. This is great and interesting, but it's not as entertaining probably for most folks as it could be. Mm-hmm. So let's, you know, move the conversation somewhere else. So that was interesting. Callum also is, you know, he's got a temper. So he has no problem admitting that. You know, so, you know, that was a challenge, I think, sometimes on the show. And I'm sure you'll probably see some of that playing out with Brandy over the course of, you know, the next episode, maybe. I think I saw a hint of that.
Speaking of temper, we had the feisty, fiery Latina Miss Samaya Reese, who originally people, you guys might have noticed, met her off of Love and Hip Hop New York, the original crew. She has then gone on to do her whole music career and whatnot. And lost a lot of weight and looks incredible and amazing. And it's interesting to watch this because she is a friend of mine off of the show, and so to hear her love life from that aspect and then see her in this positioning, it's really interesting. I'm actually very excited to see how she grows. What was your kind of take with Samaya?
Yeah, that's I have to say, before seeing the show, I didn't know a ton about her. I just know, you know, that she was like, you know, had lost a lot of weight, just looked fantastic, you know, was a musician and a rapper and all that stuff, and you know, and talented in her own respect. And then when I met her, I was even more impressed by the fact that, I mean, listen, she's got a huge heart, for one, really does. She really does care about people. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that she's entertaining. She's hilarious. Like, when you talk to her and you listen, she's hilarious and entertaining. And yes, she also, you know, she's not backing down from anyone. And you know, if she doesn't like you, she's gonna let you know it. And I wouldn't want to get in her way, man. She looks like she could probably throw a mean right hook.
Oh, yeah. And I thought she was a great choice for y'all to put in there because, some, you know, I mean, there's a couple good ones that they really picked some good people who can keep it cute, but then at the same time still know how to stir that little pot.
That's right. It's so true, man. It's so true.
Like Willis McGee, who to me stirs the pot without even knowing he's stirring the pot, because everything that comes out of his mouth, I just want to be like, boy, why would you offer her anything in the bathroom right now? What?
It's crazy. Yeah, and that joke, listen, that plays itself out. That joke plays itself out over and over again in the course of the series. You know, you have to pay attention because you'll hear, and sometimes we don't even mean it, but we make a comment about the bathroom and everybody looks at Willis, right?
I mean,
so it's man, yeah, Willis is funny because, you know, before meeting him, I just knew this is, you know, I mean, outstanding athlete, right? Professional football player, you know, and I didn't know a whole lot about him. And then when I got to know him, I mean, boy, he's one of those guys that can be real quiet, you know, and kind of reserved. But when you get to meet him, he's just, I mean, just an interesting guy. Also a real kind of like just a lover, man. Like he probably wouldn't say it that way, but I would. And the other thing about Willis is, yeah, he says things sometimes, and they could be 2 words or 10 words or 6 words, but it's punchy often. And if you're not paying attention, you might not realize how deep he just went. But Willis is funny, man. I think we had a great time with Willis on the show, and he was definitely a very positive addition.
So I kind of wanted to break off from that and expand a little bit. So Willis, here we have, and it's kind of an epidemic, you know. I mean, it's kind of been one for a while, but I guess we're acknowledging it here in 2016. We watch shows like Love and Hip Hop or Black Ink Crew or whatnot, and we see someone like Willis McGee, who's from the NFL, who the NFL does have a cloud around it that, you know, if you date an athlete, they're probably going to cheat on you or whatnot. 8 kids, 7 baby mamas. Yeah. We see this a lot in life, and we see the women kind of going after the other women. Where do you take that mentality? How do I want to word this? Where does that mentality of seven baby mamas, 8 kids, stem from love?
Yeah. Man, that sounds like a trick question.
Personally, I mean, I'm trying to figure this out for my own, so, you know what I mean, but like...
Yeah, no, I love it. You know, to be honest with you, you know, I don't know a whole lot about Willis's backstory. I do know those details, you know, but Willis is a guy from what I know. I mean, this is a guy that loves love. I mean, he does love love, and there's no question about that. Now, whether or not every relationship he's had in the past has stemmed from love, or if it's been more about lust, you know, that's up for discussion. And really, at the end of the day, only Willis would know that. But I'm assuming that, you know, because they didn't work out, you know, it certainly wasn't true love, so to speak. So, you know, I sympathize with Willis because I know that he catches a lot of slack about that, and you know, you know, lots of folks will say he earned that. I don't know. I do know that you'll see it over the course of the next few episodes. Somebody very surprising has something very interesting and helpful to say about that. Like somebody you wouldn't expect to be helpful with that. And because that's a difficult thing, you know. Can you imagine meeting, you know, a new woman or something like that and saying, hey, and she says, oh, you know, do you have any kids? And he says, well, yeah, I've got, you know, 8 kids. And they say, oh, well, wow, how many times have you been married? And he says, you know, well, how many women have you been with? Well, that was with 7 women. I mean, that's a tough, like, talk about icebreakers. You know? See,
to me, I wonder if that's gonna be Brandy, because I don't know why I just initially felt like let's talk about Brandy, because Brandy, I don't really watch Beverly Housewives, but I enjoyed scenes that I've seen her on there. I think she's entertaining for reality TV, but her story's really dope, like, because we've all been in that situation. Well, I'm not going to say we all. I've been in that situation where you have thought you were given the world, and you show up and you get this sense of like, wait a minute, is something going on? And then all of a sudden someone else is telling you, you find out he in this other relationship, and then it's just crashed. And then to hear her, the strength that she has in her to say, it wasn't about me, it was about the kids and having to move on for them. That was awesome. What was your take on meeting Brandy?
Great question. I mean, you know, and you put that so well. Before meeting Brandy, I always, you know, I didn't know much, to be honest with you. I didn't know much about her. I just knew that the perception was this is someone who has a lot of drama surrounding her in her life, both her personal life and her professional life, in terms of the reality TV and whatnot. And so, you know, I didn't know a whole lot other than that. And then when I met her, to be honest with you, I was shocked, because I was like, this is the same person that everybody's been telling me X, Y, and Z about, because she was the sweetest person. I mean, she had the nicest things to say. She had the biggest heart. She was talking about her kid, you know, her family life and all that stuff like that. And then she began sharing the story of what happened with her, you know, ex-husband and all. And, you know, it was really interesting because I saw a much softer, kinder Brandy, in this show, at least in moments, that I'd ever seen from other shows, when I'd seen clips from other shows and whatnot. And so it was really interesting because, you know, there's a human element to all these folks. You have to remember at the end of the day, and lots of stuff happens, and life could be very challenging. I'm not saying that people don't earn it and deserve the reputation that they have. But in the case of Brandy, I have to say, she's a huge heart, and she was a lot softer and kinder, at least to me, than I expected. So really great question, and I was pretty surprised by that.
And then last but not least, we have Miss Jessica White, the fabulous supermodel, who is, as she claims, a gypsy in her own mind and lives apparently in the 70s. So very interesting aura about her. Upon meeting her on the carpet, it was interesting because it was her, Aubrey, and Darcy. And so the three of them together was such an interesting, eclectic group of personalities, because you have Aubrey, who's just blunt, and then you have Darcy, who's just so poised and professional, and then here's Jessica, just this free spirit of love and life and light. What was that experience like?
You painted that picture perfect. That's so funny, and I'd like to hear more about your experience as well. But I have to say that with Jessica, I didn't have a really full picture of what, from a personality perspective, what she'd be like. And, I just knew her as somebody had dated, I think she had dated Nick Cannon and Sean Penn and some of these folks. And so I didn't really know much. And then she's a model. And so I just knew she probably takes, she took fantastic pictures. But when I met her, she was you're right. She was a lot more sort of spiritual, hippie-like than I expected her to be. And, she's really legitimately into that stuff. And so that resonated with me because I got my own, spiritual side. So we talked a lot about that kind of stuff. And she's really quick too on her feet. Okay. In terms of she loves that mental sparring. So, that was pretty interesting. I wasn't expecting that from her. Often models get the reputation of not being all that deep, and that's not a reputation that many of them have earned, because lots of them, like Jessica, for instance, have a lot of really interesting and deep and profound things to say. So yeah, it was wild meeting her in person, because it was different from what I had been led to believe or expected.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the situations that happened on the past few episodes. So really, from the first one, what I want to dive into is, they're all at this club, and at this club, people are walking up to them, and they have to interact with people. We see this guy in a pink shirt.
Yeah. And
at first, he was talking to who I thought Samaya, and then Paulie came over, and he was being Paulie and just tipsy. And the thing about Paulie is this, because I feel like I'm very similar, because I'm from the East Coast, and Paulie is from Rhode Island, which is very close to Cape Cod, Boston. So where we're from, you crack on people. It's just how we show our appreciation and love, and there's no negativity. And if you watch any of my shows here and the things that I describe people and all that, there's no negativity. It's all love. But leaving the East Coast and coming over to LA, I've realized, the whole world ain't like that. So I have to pull myself back, and I think this was a moment where I was a little irritated with Samaya, because I wish she didn't attack Brandy in this moment. I wish she used this moment to more so educate Paulie, in being that's cool. Kind of like where Darcy said at the end, she said, maybe it was your celebrity you don't realize your celebrity intimidates people. So you joking around and you clowning around like that, yeah, it is funny, but he's not looking at himself on the same platform. What was your take watching this scenario from outside? Because I'm assuming you had gone in the club afterwards. So were you watching this scenario happen, and then they had kind of sent you in, or?
Such a good question. Yeah, we were there the whole time, for most of the whole time. Yeah, we were actually there the whole time, and so we're observing a lot of this happen. We couldn't necessarily, as dating coaches, see or hear all the details, because, to be honest with you, there's a table, and all the cast members at the table, and there's 13 cameras surrounding them, so you can't really hear or see through that sort of barricade. But I got a little sort of bird's eye view of the whole scenario. And, what's interesting about that is, and you explained it so well, with Paulie is from the East Coast, and, he is sort of very, he's very Jersey. And and when you're and you're right, cracking on people when you're from the East Coast is it's almost a term of endearment.
It really is.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and him also, you have to, the thing I had to remember with him often is, I mean, how long has he been doing reality TV shows? I mean, he's a professional. He's more of a professional at doing a reality TV show than anybody else on that show.
Yeah.
I mean, than even Brand. I mean, he is, you know, and
That's a good way of looking at it.
yeah, you know, so when he says something or he does something, it's not that it's not authentic or genuine. He's being himself completely. That's something that he would do off camera. But with the cameras being on, you know, it was even, he's probably even, I would imagine, less aware of the impact that it might have on this kid who's not from the East Coast, who doesn't really know what's going on, and is feeling like totally taken advantage of or embarrassed in front of, like, you know, a national audience,
right?
Let alone all these other celebrities. So the celebrity thing is there, the TV thing is there, and all these things are playing up this one event. And I have to agree with you. Like, you know, I think, you know, an ill situation, you know, really the person that probably should have been addressed was Paulie, and he was the one who got off scot-free, right? Nobody said,
right.
Paulie. And, you know, and part of that too, I think, is people know his heart. So, you know, he's got a huge heart. You meet him in person. If you'll talk to anybody on the street, they come up to him, they're nice to him. He's nice to everybody. And so he might have got off scot-free because of who he is and because of his heart, whereas Brandy has this reputation and Samaya has this reputation. You've got two alpha females, and instantly, even before they meet each other, they know they're going to hate each other maybe. But, you know, I have to agree. I think, you know, at the end of the day, I'm sure there were better ways of handling that situation than the way it played out.
Of course there were. All right, in the second episode, so you and Laurel come out as the dating coaches and the testing. And so let's talk a little bit about the recap of that. You said, upon meeting Aubrey, she goes deep fast, but you felt Aubrey was so quick to blow you off. Yeah. Where did you, when you say she was so quick to blow you off, did you notice that she was into the conversation, or did you notice that there was a moment where she was tired, or was it just genuinely because at that time Jessica had got up, Jessica was her comfort friend in the moment, and she kind of just went with her? Was it similar to that? Yeah.
That's such a great point. And yeah, so you're right. There's a lot going on there. One is that when I had the conversation with Aubrey, I mean, it was a really interesting, fascinating conversation. We didn't get to see most of that conversation. That wasn't, you know, didn't make it to the actual episode. But really interesting, really fascinating, and lots of details about her personal life, which I'm sure they'll reveal slowly over time, you know, so that we can digest it. But it was a very, and she was very explicit about saying, hey, I really enjoyed this conversation. This is, you know, really interesting, and I like the way your mind works and all those kinds of things. And so and because of that kind of response that I get, because she indicated that she was, you know, interested in conversation, and left the entire scene and situation there. It just, you know, specifically, if I had been just a guy that was there to flirt with Aubrey, because I was just interested in Aubrey for, you know, and I wasn't in a dating coach scenario, I would have said, man, I sort of feel blown off. What happened here? I thought we had an interesting conversation. You seemed to tell me so. Right. And yet you just sort of, you know, bounced. And so, but from a dating coach perspective, I see it a lot differently than that. You know, I didn't take offense to it as a dating coach. However, you know, I think it's a little bit difficult. You know, if you're Aubrey, you know, you've got to be careful of that, because she's saying on one hand that she wants to have these kinds of conversations, that she lives for these conversations, and on the other hand, when the conversation happens, she's not, you know, sticking around to see it play out. And that's problematic for a number of reasons. From a positive psychology expert or dating coach perspective, it's problematic because, you know, when it comes to relationships or any experience, folks only remember beginnings and endings. So you could have the best beginning. You can meet someone, introduce yourself, they love who you are, they love how you look. You can have a great conversation, okay? But if you peel off, they either won't remember you at all, or if they do remember you, it's totally negative. So if Aubrey's doing that consistently, that's a problem. Because people are going to have a really negative perception of her despite having a really great conversation with her. Okay.
You spoke about alpha females, so obviously we have a house filled with them. We see Brandy saying, she goes, and which I would say is probably a defense mechanism. I only get along with guys. I see myself usually getting along with the men more. In the moment that she's doing that, we see her chest is out, and Aubrey, Samaya, and Jessica start gossiping about her, and they start, oh, I heard she's 40 and she always has her tits out, and she's all about look, she's over there with all these guys. We're all here for the same thing, right? We're all here for love. We all know that here we are, 7 fuck-ups in the house. Where does that stem from, would you say? Is that a little bit of jealousy? Is that a little bit of ignorance and not understanding another woman? Because I think a lot of the times where our relationships don't work, like for me, as a gay male, all my friends are females. It's very hard for me to connect with gay males to a certain point. And so in this situation, when I heard Brandy make that statement, it was interesting to me, and it was kind of like, why does she do that? Why does she connect with men on that level? And is it because she feels like, well, if I connect with them on a friendship level, I don't have to invest myself because now we're just friends and it can never cross into that?
Oh, wow. Powerful, man. You broke that down. I have to think that for sure it's a very complex issue. I think that's definitely part of it. You nailed it. It's one way or another, it's safe, and so part of it being safe could simply be a function of, like you said, not having to worry, still being able to get the emotional connection from men, but putting herself in a position where it's still safe, so she doesn't have to feel like she's involved in an actual relationship, so there's less at stake. Another part of that could just be based on experience that, that either growing up or whether it was in her childhood or shortly after that in young adulthood, she just connected with men because they made her feel safe for some reason. Maybe she just had bad experiences with women, or the way she digested experiences that she had with women was in a sort of negative way. But it's a pretty complex issue, but I think, at the end of the day, we often do what's safe and what feels comfortable or familiar. That's the important thing, what's familiar. And so, it's usually just a function of, having done it so much in the past that it's now feels like home.
And speaking of familiar, you guys totally took them out of that, and you gave them their first Sunset Cruise Challenge. They had to find dates on the 3rd Street Promenade. Now, let me tell you all something about the 3rd Street Promenade. I used to have to, what was that? I was selling children. I'm just kidding. I was working as a canvas person for Children's International, which you guys should totally check out and go support, okay? But I was doing that over there, so it's really hard to talk to people because when people are at the 3rd Street Promenade, they're thinking about one thing, and that is shopping, not talking to you. So now you got 7 celebrities running around the 3rd Street Promenade trying to find a relationship. It was so awkward, first of all. Callan looked like he was like hunting deer or something.
Didn't he? Yeah.
Brandy, actually, to me, I would say she was the champion of it because she seemed to not have a problem to walk up and talk to anybody.
That's interesting you say that, because Brandy took the longest to find someone. She
Really?
was the very last. But the way that it played out on in the episode, it did. You get the perception that she was just, there was no problem for her. But actually, it was the most problem for her. It was most difficult.
Where did Aubrey shut down? Where did you notice, like, because
she shut down before the exercise started. She shut down when the exercise was mentioned. Like before, I would say, as soon as the exercise came out of Darcy's mouth, Aubrey has already shut down. She was shut down before she even entered that exercise.
Interesting. And what did you get from the Callan and Pauly D saying let's join forces? What's your take?
That was great.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, Pauly is man, he's got no problem talking to people. And it's not his problem. Like, meeting people, talking to people, keeping the conversation going. He's got no problem with that. And he makes everybody around him feel more comfortable, particularly in that situation. So I kind of love that because, Callum is a really great conversationalist, and he has no problem introducing himself and everything to people. And yet still, Pauly comes across much more conversational, much more relaxed, at least on that 3rd Street Promenade situation. So I think they benefited each other in that way. I think that was a really smart idea. I kind of wanted girls should do something similar. But
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for too. All right, so they go on this date, and then all of a sudden, Aubrey's like, well, you know what? I didn't participate, but I'm just going to cock block everybody. So she runs around the boat. We see her. She went to Brandy's date, Preston, and she... when she realized, like, or came across, like, when he didn't recognize who or what she did, she was kind of like, okay, I'm over this, moved on to the next one. She sits with Josh and his date, and, oh, you're a singer, and it's just so funny because she reminds me exactly of a friend of mine. I'm just like, girl, you are deflecting your love life right now and meddling in all these other people's love lives right now, and you need to be focused on your own. You should have got you a damn pedestrian off the street so you could have a practice dummy. But I do love Aubrey, how quick her tongue is, though, because Josh's date, and shout out to Josh's date for not backing down. But Aubrey said, can you sing something? She said, yeah, sure, after you. I was like, okay, girl, you gotta come for Aubrey. And then Aubrey gonna say, oh, well, I have 2 platinum albums, and I'm not doing that to myself.
Totally.
That's why I fuck with you, Aubrey. So then after that, we see Jessica drifting away from the date. Okay, now, I know editing can do some stuff, but how awkward was this in real life?
Yeah, it was pretty uncomfortable. I mean, particularly, I think, obviously, for Robert. I mean, listen, this guy's no lightweight. I mean, he's successful, extremely successful. I'll just leave it at that. And, this guy flies back and forth, I think, to Tokyo, like, regularly. And he dropped a whole bunch of stuff to make that date happen. And, and he's a really interesting guy. He's easy to talk to, and, has a lot in common with Jessica. So it was extremely uncomfortable for him. I mean, he played it off well, like he wasn't so bothered, but you could read his body language and see that he wasn't happy, he wasn't enjoying himself. And I'm sure he was, kicking himself thinking, well, I can't believe I dropped all this other stuff. Who knows how much money he could have made in those couple hours that he basically sacrificed instead so he could go on the cruise.
So when she says tired, oh, I'm tired, I'm drained of being on, I mean, is that... Here's a question for relationship-wise. Like, when you go into a relationship, like, I mean, I've looked at it 2 different ways. It's like, okay, I can go in being the best Jesse that I can be, or I can go in being like, look, this is who the fuck I am. Like, you know what I mean? And I struggle with that. And so when she said the on thing, it made me think, well, girl, like, what do you mean you're on? Like, we're here to be our authentic selves, So where does the draining come from? Was it from the situation? Was it something that you think was just deeper and that's just how she is? And what would you say about like the on personality and initially meeting someone, and because you don't want to get drained, and there are times where me personally, I've sat with someone for 6 hours and I could go another 6, or then you meet someone, you're talking for like 30 minutes and you're like, okay, where would you say that on and the draining come from?
Such a great question. I think you're a dating coach, and I think you really are. You're just a closet one. I think what's interesting is okay. So I think that's a challenge with all of them. And to be honest with you, the basic premise of the show, if you really are thinking about it, is here are some folks that are getting to know themselves that might not know themselves quite as well as they could. I mean, who of us do know ourselves that well,
right.
But have a public persona that they have a deep investment in maintaining, and they're going out into the world trying to meet people and trying to be authentic in meeting people. So there's like a whole, there's a conflict here within each of them about who they are versus who they want to be and who other people think they are, and then all this is going on in their heads. So with Jessica especially, that's a big deal. She does have this kind of persona that she puts on, and it's interesting and it's fascinating, it's entertaining, it's all those things. And then there's the Jessica that's the real Jessica when she's just in a room all by herself, or in her house all by herself. And that played out a little in that scene. That's exactly what you picked up. And so, it's tough because I agree with you. The last thing you want to do is put forth like this image of yourself that's not you. And then meet somebody great, they believe and they buy into the image, and then after 6 months you're exhausted from keeping up this image, and they're exhausted, and then you both drop each other's PR agent and you get to meet each other directly, and then you realize you don't like each other. So I agree with being completely authentic. Now, I think you have to also take that with a grain of salt, really understand what that means. Like, most of us don't really aren't all that self-aware. So we don't really know who we are. We just know who people have told us we are, or who we think we want to be. So we say, and then that's who we say we are. Oh yeah, well, you know, everybody always said I was really smart, so I'll play to that. And everybody said I'm really funny, so I'll play to that. But like at the end of the day, maybe you find being funny all the time exhausting, and maybe you find being smart all the time exhausting. And so I don't know. There's a lot going on here that you know, can't necessarily be made explicit because it is a TV show. But man, you just nailed it with Jessica. I mean, that was such an uncomfortable situation. She, you know, she is conflicted by that for sure.
So we get to the recap day. Brandy basically says that she feels Aubrey needs an ego check. And that Brandy went into this whole thing basically where she wanted to be a relationship coach and tell Aubrey about herself. And it kind of turned negative because Aubrey took that. And it's just so intriguing how women are, because we learned so much in the second episode. Now in the second episode, we learned that Aubrey felt Brandy didn't like her the moment she saw her. And then it makes me go back to the NBC carpet where it was Samaya and Brandy to get teamed together, and then it was Aubrey, Jessica, and Darcy together. And now I'm wondering, okay, well, maybe Aubrey and Brandy really don't be getting along like that. So we get into this cattiness. Now it's the two blonde girls who don't get along. It's the two, you know, that intrigues me within it. And, you know, is there jealousy there? Where does that hatred for one of another come? They don't know each other, and they probably, if they had a conversation, would probably get along very well because they've probably been through the same types of situation. And Aubrey, you sitting up here, I love you, girl, but you sitting up here talking about her breasts are always out. Girl, yours are too. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, it ain't like she ain't got her nipples all over the damn thing. You know, next week she looked like she might be making out with a few men, and we'll talk about that next week. But we aren't there yet. So where does this anger come from? Because the other thing, I did love the ending of this because I saw Aubrey, and I love this, when you can finally just say, I receive. It's the hardest thing in the world. Trust me. That's why I wear my What Would Jesus Do bracelet, because I need to be reminded on a daily basis. You know, where did that anger come from between these women?
Yeah, wow. It's such a great point. Listen, the one thing I know for sure, it's such a deep question, and it's one that I can't answer necessarily because I don't have access to these people's past lives and past relationships except for what I read online. But I will tell you that based on what I know, you know, anger is always upside down sadness, right? It's always it's you know, you're projecting your sadness onto someone else and you're taking it out on them, but it's always upside down sadness. And so what that means is that at some point in time in their lives, they've had major disappointments, and I'm guessing those disappointments were revolved around relationships, whether it was with women or with men, or with their parents. It probably had a huge something to do with it as well. But you know, when you've got such strong personalities, two alpha females that are used to being the center of attention, you're just bound to have conflict, particularly if they're invested in those.
But Rob, if so we get to the center of attention story, right? Where that's what Brandy's even saying. She's like, she just wants to be the star. She's obsessed with this fame thing. But where we hear that she's obsessed with fame, all we're seeing is her deflecting everything.
Right.
So how do you become the center of attention, but you deflect so much?
Well, the question is, what is she deflecting? Right. So she's deflecting the negative energy onto other people. Mm-hmm. So like rule 101 of really relationships and psychology is, or psychology, you know, psychology 101, relationships 101 is, everything is projection. Mostly everything is projection. And so, you know, particularly negative things, right? And so what Aubrey is challenged by a lot, and a lot of us are challenged by this a lot, is that we tend to, what we aren't able to accept within ourselves, we project onto other people. And we all do it all day.
Amen.
Day,
sure
right?
do.
Yeah. So to a large extent, particularly when negative comments come out of thin air, you know, and they often do, and they don't have to come out of thin air, but largely when they do, it's projection. You're projecting something you feel on the inside. And Darcy nailed that. If you heard what Darcy said, she just nailed it. She said, it sounds, Aubrey, like what you're feeling on the inside, you're sort of imposing on Brandy and saying that she's feeling that, but it's you that's feeling that. And so often when we have difficulty like accepting how we feel about something, we'll project it on another person and take it out on them. You know, a really extreme version of that is people that are cutters, right? People that cut themselves. they're looking for a way to kind of project what they're feeling to their own body. We often do that with each other all the time. We project on other people when we're not willing to accept or admit to something we feel on the inside. And so it's a pretty complex thing,
when they
but
were
at the
talking
end of
about
the day, a lot of projection.
when they were talking about like, oh, her tits are always out, and look at her, like she's all over these guys. Is that, would you say, I'm not saying them specifically, but we hear this in life, like girls will judge other girls, and it's like, girl, did you see what you posted on Instagram? Like, is that that's, so you're saying that stems from typically projection?
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, all judgment really is self-judgment. It just is. And what does that mean? That means what I see in you, I strengthen in myself. Sometimes we say it that way. Sometimes we say what I can't admit to myself or can't accept within myself, I will judge you for, or will project on you. And so all it really means is that, so for instance, if I feel, really insecure about something, whatever it is, I might crack on somebody else about it. But deep down inside, it's me. I'm not saying that that's what Paulie did at all. Paulie's just being funny. But often what we do is we crack on other people, or we judge other people for either something that we can't accept or admit within ourselves. And that's not always true, but largely it is. If you pay attention, you'll notice how much of life is projection. Like, for instance, if I was like right now, hey, you want something to drink? Would you like a glass of water? Doesn't mean that I don't want you to have a glass of water. But to be honest with you, I'm probably thinking that I want some water first, okay? And I just happen to include you in that. That's often what happens. Like, we don't like to admit that, but it's true. Like, if I ask you if you want a glass of water, often I'm not just being nice. I wanted a glass of water, and I just happen to remember you.
Right.
So it's a little bit of that. But the truth is, you can't really judge somebody without it affecting you. And if you really love yourself and if you really want to be happy, dropping judgment is like the only way to do it. Eventually people come around to understanding that.
So to wrap this segment up, so basically one thing I loved from it was that I was intrigued by is she said, yeah, I just find it easier that if I walk up to somebody, to deal with people who, if I walk up to them and I say, fuck you, bitch, they can just calmly say, you know what? I'm not going to receive it like that. And it was so interesting to me that that's the type of person she goes out and looks for. But then when Brandy did it, it was like, for that moment, these are the type of people that you search for, but you can't become that person.
Well, and so geez, man, you've got some great, insightful comments, because what is she saying there? Let's think about what she's saying. She's saying to me, this is what I hear: I'm looking for someone to unconditionally love me.
Boom.
Is what she said, right? That's what she's saying. And so, and the problem with that is, if you're looking for somebody outside of you to unconditionally love you, you will look for a very, very long time and never experience unconditional love. At least if you live in this world, right?
Okay.
So what she's saying at an even deeper level is this: I don't know what unconditional love is. I haven't experienced very much of it. Most of the love in my life has been conditional. People have judged me. People have, right? And so, so then you get immediate insight into what's going on inside of her head. And so, the only way to really, begin to sort of understand or touch, Aubrey's heart, which is something that I think Paulie does pretty well, because he is he's a very loving guy, is that he offers her a taste of that, a taste of what it's like to be unconditionally loving and give her unconditional positive regard. And that's also why she has a pretty good relationship with Darcy as well. Because Darcy, as blunt as she can be and as honest as she could be, at the end of the day, like, sort of offers up this space where Aubrey can be unconditionally loved, or at least receive unconditional positive regard. And that's what's going on right there.
And I loved that the first thing Aubrey said was, "Oh, Paulie D was here. I couldn't even stand. He just seemed such a tool." And it's always that you cannot label it. You cannot label people, put boxes on people, because sometimes I feel like we search to date ourselves instead of realizing, like, no, you searching to date someone like you means you need to complete yourself and then find the yin to your yang, which probably has nothing to do with anything that you do. And within that, we see at the end, Aubrey breaks down and she says, I just don't have the right tools. And that's the most amazing thing to own up to, because it really does take it takes a lot of work to get to the point to realize that you don't have the tools, to admit to yourself, wow, I mean, me, myself, I just went through it. I was like, shit, I lived 28 years thinking I was putting it together and I've been using the wrong fucking tools, you know? And when you get to that point, that's a lot of work to get there. And then once you get there, it's like going to IKEA. You think you're going to buy the desk, but then you realize when you take it home, you're like, shit, well, now I got the desk and now I got to put it back. Now I got to put it together. So now you at the beginning. When she said the right tools, ending it out, what was that moment for you like watching it? It's
moments like that make you really love Aubrey. As much as you can be mad at her, as much as it frustrates people, as much as she, the perception is so negative in so many respects, there's something deeply interesting and fascinating and insightful about her. It's a very deep and insightful.
It's relatable.
It is very relatable. And, every part of me feels very much that she definitely meant it. And Darcy's radar, as good as anybody, feels like she definitely meant it. And, it's quite profound, actually. And lots of honesty there. And that's not an easy thing to do, to be that honest. And so just very few people ever come around to saying something like that and really meaning it. Yep. So I thought that was just fantastic. Like, that's one of those things that you could say, man, I hate Aubrey for this or this or this. I know viewers will say it, but at the same time, she has a moment like that, which is just a moment of just an epiphany, like a little mini Satori, and you have to say, there's so much more going on here than you realize.
And it's about finding those moments, and when you have those realizations, to work on them, and you don't just have that realization, then the next day you just continue doing what you're doing. Like, you take that and you put in the work and you pour your concrete. All right, let's head into predictions. Skirt.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So it looks like we're going to get a house party next week. We get Brandy making out with everybody and then saying that she only wants, Callan, and then he don't really believe her. And then we see Aubrey and Polly making out, and it just looks like
hookup season.
It looks like hookup season, what else is going to happen when you put 7 people in a house? The more I watch this, I'm just so intrigued to see. I guess it's because I know Samaya and how she loves, and I can tell Aubrey. Jessica is so intriguing to me because I cannot picture who or what type of man can mesh with her. Because she's so strong, independent, and almost like in this like Daisy love bubble of life that who could pop that? Yeah. That's intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And then Brandy also on the opposite end of that, where she's in this bubble, but it's a life bubble that I feel like she's worked so hard to build to protect herself. I would be floored to see her walk away from this show in a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And you're making such great points. With Jessica, it's interesting because you'll see something very interesting develop with Jessica over the next episode or two. Something surprising. And you're right. The thing about Jessica is that she needs, and one of the first, what we didn't see in that first episode was talking to Aubrey for a long time, and Jessica was part of that conversation. And Jessica was like I said before, she just loves that back and forth, like that just sparring, like mental verbal sparring. She just loves it. And if a guy can't offer that to her, she's not interested. She needs someone to keep her on their toes, to challenge her. I talked about with her, that can be exhausting for guys sometimes, especially when you first meet them.
But is that also what exhausts her?
It does. Great question, and that's something that I've talked to her a little bit about. I said, don't you sometimes also want to? She's like, yeah, but how else will I know whether a guy can do that unless I do it right off the, right from the jump? And I get that to some extent, but everybody's got a little bit of that in them. So I just sort of encourage her to be a little softer about that in the beginning with guys that she's just met, because guys, like you said earlier, in addition to her being a celebrity, she's also tall and she's beautiful and she's witty, and that can be intimidating to a lot of guys. Right. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see what you think as the next kind of episode or two transpires, because she's got a great date.
I'm excited to see. Well, Rob, I want to thank you for Skyping in with us. Hopefully when you're in LA, you'll come stop by the studio.
Absolutely, man. I so appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And what's your Twitter handle, and where can everyone follow you? And you have a book out, so we need to promote the book. What's the name? And we're doing a re-release, right?
Yep. So we got Happiness from the Inside Out. That's the first one you want to grab. There's a lot of great stuff in there on relationships. And then we're re-releasing Love from the Inside Out, which will be out in about a week. And you can check me out on Instagram at Rob Mack Official. Yeah.
And totally follow him, you guys, because here's what I love about his Instagram is he posts quotes that he actually writes.
Oh, that's true.
You know? I'm aspiring to get there, you know what I mean? Because, like, some of the shit I post, I'm like, that don't need no inspirational quote under it.
But you know what, though? You have such an interest. I mean, and the things folks might not know this, but, we genuinely like each other. Like, I genuinely consider you a friend. Like, and the stuff that you post on Instagram, I find very interesting. And the things you have to say, even more interesting. Like, you're a really deep guy. Like, really interesting guy. Like, it's very rare to meet someone who's so talented and creative in one respect, and then also can sort of go so deep in, other respects, whether it's spiritual, self-help, psychology. So,
Chad, I have to balance this out with all the love and hip hop they make me watch here at AfterBuzz.
I bet, man. I can't imagine.
All right, well, Rob, yes. So when you're in LA, come in studio. As for everyone at home, thank you guys for tuning in. We totally appreciate it. Join us on this season. I'm going to be bringing some of the AfterBuzz friends in here so we can talk love, life, and all that. Congratulations on an amazing show. I'm very excited to see where we go. And we starting Wags up soon too. So make sure you guys stay in tune with AfterBuzz for that. And we're going to have the cast up in this bitch. All right. Thank y'all for tuning in. Until next week. Peace.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.